Привет. Hello. My name is Danilo Lishchishin. I'm a master's student of history at the University of Toronto, participating in the Jewish Studies graduate cluster. In September, I will start my PhD in history at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. Every family has its legends. In my family, I grew up hearing that Mikhailo Shkilnik, my praded or great-grandfather, helped rescue a great Ukrainian rabbi during the Holocaust. When I arrived in Toronto from the United States for my master's in history, I resolved to delve deeper into the family legend in order to learn more about my praded and the Hasidic Rebbe of Belz, whom he rescued. But as often happens with research into family histories, what I found surprised me. The contents in the UCRDC archives, font 2011.1, present a remarkable case study in the challenges of researching Jewish-Christian relations in Ukraine and Ukrainian righteous among the nations during the Second World War. Righteous among the nations is a very specific title, only awarded by Yad Vashem to vetted non-Jewish rescuers of Jews during the Holocaust. In 1962, Israel's designated Holocaust Memorial Organization, Yad Vashem, began investigating cases of non-Jews altruistically taking substantial risks to rescue Jews from the Holocaust. The organization requires that survivors and eyewitnesses provide written, signed, and notarized testimony of the rescue attempt in order for the rescuer to receive the title. Only a select number of rescuers received this recognition, and as I soon discovered in my research, Mikhailo Shkilnik was not one of them. Praded Mikhailo Shkilnik was a leader of the local Ukrainian community in Peremyshliane with a strong patriotic revolutionary background. The son of a well-off peasant family from Surakhiu, modern Suraków, in Poland, he crossed the old Austrian-Russian border in 1917 to help build the new Ukrainian Republic then taking shape. He worked as a civil servant, first in the Ministry of Trade and then in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My praded concluded his revolutionary career in the Ukrainian consular mission to Warsaw in 1921, when the Poles detained him and the rest of the mission after the partition of Ukraine between the Second Polish Republic and the Bolsheviks. After he secured his freedom, praded Mikhailo pursued a legal education and settled down as a judge in the city of Peremyshliane. Peremyshliane is a small city, located about 45 kilometers southeast of Lviv. Praded Mikhailo served on the judicial bench for 17 years, until the Soviet invasion in 1939. The city's new communist authorities fired and then killed all pre-war judges in Peremyshliane. My praded, however, managed to evade the NKVD's grasp thanks to the assistance of lower-level Jewish civil servants, some old friends in the Soviet garrison, and pure luck. When the Nazis reached Peremyshliane on the 1st of July 1941, Shkilnik and the local priest, Reverend Dr. Emilian Koch, went to the general in command of the local section of the front in order to obtain permission to bury political prisoners executed by the NKVD before the Soviet evacuation of the city. When the general discovered praded Mikhailo's credentials as a former judge, he immediately appointed the Ukrainian jurist as mayor. My praded accepted the appointment out of fear of the consequences of refusal. It was there in Peremyshliane that Shkilnik's path crossed that of the Rebbe of Belz. Aharon Rokeach, or Rokach, according to Polish transliteration, the Hasidic Rebbe of Belz, hid in Shkilnik city for several years before continuing on his ultimately successful journey out of Axis Europe. The leader of the Belzer subsect of Hasidic Judaism, he earned a reputation as a miracle-working Wunderrabbiner who attracted both Jewish and Christian petitioners from across Eastern Europe. Consequently, he was a high-value target for the invading Nazis. After the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939 partitioned Poland, the Rebbe and his family quickly escaped from Nazi-occupied Belz into the Soviet zone of occupation, where they subsequently traveled to Peremyślane at some point in 1940. Peremyślane had a pre-war population of 9,715 people, of which the plurality were Jewish. The Rebbe stayed in this diverse city for 2 to 3 years, before departing westward in a circuitous journey to Hungary and eventually to British Mandatory Palestine. He later died in independent Israel in 1957. Yet the question of how exactly the Rebbe of Belz managed to survive for so long in Peremyślane remains unanswered to this day. The archives of the UCRDC contain Pradid Szkilnik's account of how he helped the Rebbe survive the Nazi occupation. He published this account in an article in the newspaper Nowy Szlach in 1963. As my Pradid described in his article, on a Sunday about a week after his appointment as mayor in July 1941, the secretary of the municipal government, S. Hiszczynski, burst into his office. The distraught Hiszczynski informed the mayor that German soldiers were burning the local synagogues and inciting locals into conducting a brutal pogrom. Szkilnik wanted to stop the violence, but the secretary barred him from leaving, telling him that it was too dangerous to interfere directly with Nazi anti-Semitic actions. This pogrom served as a catalyst for Szkilnik's encounter with the Rebbe. A few days after the pogrom, some members of the local Hasidic community approached Szkilnik with a great secret the Rebbe had been hiding for some time in Peremyślane. As they informed the mayor, the pogromists had killed Rokeach's only son and successor, and stolen everything of value from the Rebbe's quarters. Szkilnik stated that he arranged for the return of the stolen valuables 2 days after he met with the Hasidic representatives. Sometimes later, the delegation reappeared in Szkilnik's office, asking him to hide the Rebbe. Szkilnik readily admitted that he feared what the Nazis might do to him or his family, including my babusia or grandmother, who was 14 years old then, were the Nazis to discover that he was sheltering the famed Rebbe of Belz. Thus, instead of hiding Rokeach in his own home or office, the mayor arranged for the Rebbe to stay in the mansard roof of a formerly Jewish-owned house, which my Pradid quickly designated as a warehouse for electrical equipment. The mayor assigned the one remaining Jewish municipal employee in the city, an electrician named A. Zilbe, to manage the warehouse and protect the hidden Rebbe. Pradid Mikhailo stated in his article that he periodically visited the Rebbe to bring food and supplies. The Rebbe continued to hide in that mansard roof for the rest of his stay in Peremyślane. A visitor from Hungary, however, soon heralded the departure of Aharon Rokeach. At the end of August 1942, a man dressed in a Hungarian colonel's uniform appeared in Pradid Mikhailo's home, asking where the Rebbe of Belz was. Suspecting that the man was a Gestapo agent, the mayor categorically denied knowing any rabbis in the city, but he offered the name of a man who might know the Rebbe's whereabouts. Several days after this nerve-wracking encounter, my Pradid met again with the Rebbe, who revealed that the mysterious colonel was a courier bringing food from the Hungarian Hasidic community. This was the last time Pradid Szkilnik saw Aharon Rokeach. For a few days later, Zilbe contacted the mayor with news that some men in Gestapo uniforms had taken the Rebbe in the dead of night. A year after Rokeach's disappearance, one of the Rebbe's female relatives appeared in Pradid Mikhailo's office, informing him that Aharon Rokeach had made his way to Bochnia, a settlement on the outskirts of Krakow. Years later, after immigrating as a displaced person to Winnipeg, my Pradid tried to re-establish contact with the Rebbe through the assistance of the Canadian Jewish Congress and the United Chias Service. In 1954, Szkilnik met with Heinz Franz, the executive director of the Western Division of the Canadian Jewish Congress, to request assistance in determining if the Rebbe of Belz survived the Second World War. Frank then contacted Menachem Kreiser, the director of United Hias Services branch in Tel Aviv, for aid in resolving this question. United Hias Service is a Jewish-American humanitarian agency helping refugees resettle in safer countries, not a memorial organization like Yad Vashem. Hias workers managed to find the Rebbe's residence at 63 Achad Ha'am Street in Tel Aviv. Although Rokeach himself was away at the time visiting Jerusalem, his surviving family members were at home and willing to talk to the Hias workers. The family members recalled Mikhail Shkilnik's aid to the Rebbe and stated that Aharon Rokeach would appreciate the chance to correspond with his good friend in Canada. Kreiser relayed this information to Frank in a letter dated 22nd of October 1954. Frank, in turn, forwarded this letter to my Pradid on the 27th of October. It is uncertain if Pradid Shkilnik and Rokeach ever managed to exchange letters before the Rebbe's death in 1957. In any case, the evidence contained in the letter from Hias seemed to validate the accuracy of Shkilnik's version of events. But Yad Vashem would conduct their own investigation 40 years later. By chance, Yad Vashem learned of my Pradid's narrative through an event in the U.S. Capitol. Dr. Volodymyr Shkilnik, Mikhail's son and my pravoyko, or great-uncle, attended the National Interfaith Convocation to celebrate the restoration of religious freedom and the independence of Ukraine in Washington, D.C. on the 22nd of March, 1992. It seems someone at the event passed along the basic details of Pradid Mikhail's account to Yad Vashem, as that organization reached out to Pravoyko Volodymyr on the 15th of September 1992, requesting more information. Through his contacts in the Anti-Defamation League, Pravoyko Volodymyr sent a translation of his father's article along and possibly copies of the letters from United Hias Service and the Canadian Jewish Congress to Dr. Mordecai Paldiel, then director of the Department for the Righteous in Yad Vashem. With this initial testimony in hand, Yad Vashem investigators began searching for corroborating evidence. In their search, however, Yad Vashem uncovered a completely different account of the Rebbe's stay in Peremishliane. Upon interviewing members of the Belzer Hasidic community in Israel, Yad Vashem employees discovered that no one could remember the Rebbe ever mentioning having received aid from my Pradid. Aharon Rokeach never liked talking about the Holocaust and never wrote any memoirs. His students in Israel managed to piece together a history of the Rebbe's survival based on his occasional remarks and rare anecdotes. The British Hasidic journalist Yosef Israel presents this Belzer community narrative in his 2005 English-language book, Rescuing the Rebbe of Belz. According to Aharon Rokeach's students, the Rebbe only received support from Peremishliane's Jewish community during his stay in the city. Neither Peremishliane's Greek Catholic mayor, Mikhail Shkilnik, nor the mysterious Hungarian colonel, nor the Jewish electrician A. Zilba had any role, positive or negative, in this narrative. So, Dr. Paul Dio wrote back to Pravoyko Volodymyr in January 1993, requesting that he provide names and addresses of eyewitnesses to corroborate his father's testimony. Pravoyko Volodymyr simply could not do this, because all eligible eyewitnesses were long deceased by then. The Nazis had killed the Jewish electrician A. Zilba, who had been tasked by the elder Shkilnik to protect the Rebbe in the makeshift electrical equipment warehouse. The former mayor of Peremishliane never learned the identity of the Hungarian colonel who supposedly visited the city in 1942. The letter from the Tel Aviv Hias branch did not meet Yad Vashem's standards for testimony, as the Rebbe's family members did not sign and notarize the document. Those family members could not repeat their testimony to Yad Vashem agents, as they had either died or otherwise become unable to testify. Both Aharon Rokeach and Mikhail Shkilnik were long gone, the former buried in Jerusalem and the latter in Toronto. Whether or not Volodymyr Shkilnik ever replied to Yad Vashem, it was there that the investigations into the Rebbe's stay in Peremyshliane ended. Nowadays, it is nearly impossible to gather sufficient evidence to petition for recognition of my Pradid as one of the righteous among the nations. All eyewitnesses to the Rebbe's stay in Peremyshliane have passed away. The last of Mikhail Shkilnik's children, his eldest daughter Maria Shkilnik-Lishchishin, died in January 2017 and now lies in the same burial plot as her parents and husband in Toronto's York Cemetery. This episode serves as a poignant reminder of the limits in the searches for histories of righteous among the nations. Due to lack of testimony from the Rebbe himself, two separate narratives about his time in Peremyshliane emerged, one publicized by Mikhail Shkilnik and the other by the Rebbe's followers after his death. Save for a miraculous discovery of previously untapped primary sources, nothing will resolve this historical knot. Sometimes, past events really are lost to history.